Yeah, hi, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. It's Harry from Hasper TV back with another video. Just so you guys know, this is a pre-recording. So if you guys put any comments in the chat, um, I might be there, might not be there, but this isn't live. So yeah, this is my North London Derby preview. And today I've got Alexis with me, the first Arsenal fan I think I've had on my channel ever. So big up, Alexis. Do you just say a bit about yourself at all, or how long have you been an Arsenal fan or anything like that?
I've been an Arsenal fan all my life. The standard story: wherever your dad supports, they indoctrinate you, and you support them too. Otherwise, there's no dinner. So used to be a season ticket holder back in the Highbury days. I'm no longer a season ticket holder, but I get offered tickets every now and again. I get to see the odd match, but follow them as much as I can. Always legally. Never watch any streams, of course. Would never do anything like that. So I would never steal from big football broadcasters. So that's me, just a standard everyday Arsenal fan, and but I'm surrounded by Tottenham fans, so I've got used to having that. That's why I don't mind being here.
Yeah, you're like me. I'm surrounded by Arsenal fans my whole life, pretty much. So yeah,
that's it.
Yeah.
We've mellowed out.
So as you guys might know, we are playing Arsenal this Wednesday. By the way, this is coming out after the United game, so we're not really going to talk about the United game or the Tamworth. We're playing Tamworth in the cup anyway today, so we're not talking after that result. I might touch on it a bit just because obviously you guys might rest on players, might not rest on players, and I want your opinion on that a bit in a minute. But first of all, we're going to just talk about previous North London derbies. So first of all, from an Arsenal perspective, do you have any derbies that stick out for you, positive or negative at all, like in the past? Or?
Well, I mean, look, in my opinion, and it is my opinion, everyone is allowed to disagree with me, of course. The North London derby is the game that I look forward to the most every single year. And it's one of the fiercest rivalries in England, in my opinion. I think it's always feisty. There's always goals. There's always cards. There's always fouls. There's always terrible defending. So you can always get a good show out of a North London derby. Of course, being an Arsenal fan, we've had the majority of the wins, but a few stand in mind. A couple of 5-2s. I remember, the more goals that go in, the better. I think there was a 4-3 where Patrick Vieira scored the fourth goal. That was a bit of an epic game. There were a lot of good finishes from both sides. I remember Jermaine Defoe scoring a couple.
Oh, the 5-4. Do you mean the 5-4? Yeah.
5-4. Yeah. I mean, a couple of top corner screamers from both teams.
Defoe scored a great goal that game. I like
that. Yeah, that's it. Obviously, there's a couple of heartbreakers in there when Jermaine Genius got that late goal against us. Didn't enjoy that.
The 2-2? Was that the 2-2 game?
2-2. Yeah. A famous moment, obviously Thierry Henry running most of at least half the pitch and then finishing it off. But obviously, when you're Thierry Henry, you can do things like that. But my personal favourite moment in a North London derby was I think it was Mauricio Taricco celebrating on the pitch as if you just stopped us from being able to win the title, but that draw wasn't enough and we'd actually won it at your ground. You can't, I mean, if it was the other way around, it would probably be your favourite moment too, I'd guess.
I knew you'd bring it up.
I have to.
I was at that game. I was actually at that game.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, I was about to say lucky, but then I realised that
not really.
For you. Right, it's the fact that he made a big deal out of it.
I remember. Yeah, only 12. Yeah.
No, it's the fact that he went up to Henry and Pires, giving it the big on, and they were just like, "Hang on, do you know that we've actually still won the league?" And
I think it's the game that was like Henry told Robbie Keane. Don't ask me how I know this, but I've watched a lot of this sort of stuff off Instagram, whatever. Apparently, Keane was like celebrating in front of him. He goes, "You're celebrating, but look who's gonna be laughing at the end," or something like this, something like that.
Yeah. That's when rivalries were proper back then.
Yeah,
proper rivalries. The players.
This is kind of off topic a bit, but do you think this whole Campbell thing played a big part in the rivalry being even more fierce, say, in the 2000s compared to now? Because when Campbell left in 2001 to Arsenal, I do think it kind of stoked the fire a lot more. Like the derbies, to me, felt, I don't know how to describe it, just a lot more fierce, like you said. Yeah.
I think that from a Tottenham point of view, it was always going to inflame your fans. It was going to upset you. And the way Sol Campbell is as a person, the way he does things, and I can say this, you know, as an Arsenal fan, he doesn't always do things in a logical way. He sometimes doesn't do it in a way you'd expect someone to, and he can rub people up the wrong way. And I think the way that he did it when he left you to come to Arsenal, there was so much silence around it. Then he was giving interviews and saying that he's your man and he's got a contract, and then a lot of tongue-in-cheek stuff as well. I think it was always going to upset Tottenham fans, and rightly so. I would have been upset too if I was a Tottenham fan. I still always say that he left and it was the right decision for him to move, because he wasn't going to win things at Tottenham at that point. And the kind of players that we had at the time, I mean, you'd be mad to not want to go and play with players like Robert Pires and Freddie Ljungberg and Thierry Henry. You'd be mad not to want to go and play in a team like that. I mean, any footballer recognizes quality and they want to go and play with the best, right? And he was able to go there and win things. So with hindsight, good move. Did it stoke the rivalry for Tottenham fans? 150% yes. For Arsenal fans, yes, but in a different way. It didn't make us want to beat you more, because that we always wanted to beat you, but it was more when we did beat you, we could mock you. It just was an extra, we had the Sol Campbell songs. We knew that there was another button we could press, and we didn't even need to say. All we'd have to say is Sol Campbell's name, and we know that you'd be on the floor screaming.
Triggered. Yeah. You know, because I was watching. The reason I brought this up is I watched like a Sky Sports thing. If you go on the YouTube channel,
I've seen it too.
Have you seen it? Did you watch it as well? Yeah, they were saying about how he signed behind the scenes. Because obviously we didn't have X back then, or Twitter, or journalists weren't tweeting stuff. Like, things were kind of kept under wraps on the most part back then. And they were having secret, in that video you watched, like I did, there were secret meetings after midnight or something in the back of his garden. It just makes you think, like, what the hell? But it was weird because obviously he was linked with Bayern Munich, Inter Milan. I remember as a kid growing up, I actually met him and his agent. It's so ironic his agent was in that video. Basically he's basically one of my family friends was a football agent, and he used to work with Sky Andrews, you know, Campbell's agent. So I ended up meeting Campbell years and years before he left. But so there was always rumours he was going to Inter Milan, Manchester United, all these other teams, and then Wenger brought him into that press conference, and that was it. And the rest is history, really.
Yeah, the rest is history. I mean,
I didn't actually go to that. You know, the first game they played after he signed was actually, we played you lot at home. I didn't go to that game, but I'm sure you've seen the videos when they held up the Judas stuff and all that. Yeah,
it was heavy going. Obviously, when it was the other way around, and Tottenham would visit us, and obviously I was going back in the days. And,
hyper in it. Yeah.
Even then, with the small pocket of Tottenham fans in the corner, there was a lot of vitriol, a lot of venom. It's like, I don't want to be him. But I was going to say, obviously you said there were lots of. I used to have a lot of secret gardens and secret meetings in my back garden too, but very different.
Not those kind of meetings, though. I don't think. Yeah. But so like for me, from my personal standpoint, I felt from London derbies were probably the 4-4 when Lennon got the 4th one in that game, because we thought we were down and out. Obviously, Redknapp won 3-2. That is our only win in the league away to Arsenal in like probably 100 years. I don't know, a very long time. Put it that way.
It was a long time.
And Kabul got that goal.
It was
obviously there's a few draws here and there that were quite decent, but I don't think we really turned the corner against Arsenal until Redknapp came in. I think, as in some advantage. At least we're winning the home games once Redknapp came in most of the time, and then so like for 10 years we kind of got. But then it's partly because Arsenal kind of declined a bit anyway. Yeah.
So I think you're right. It got to a point where we were on the down. We were declining. I mean, it's natural in football. You go through peaks and troughs as a football team. All of them do. Look at Man United. They're in a particularly long trough at the moment, but they'll be back at some point. Look, we were going down, but that's not to say that's the only reason. Like Tottenham had improved. Tottenham had improved. You'd improved your scouting networks. You were bringing in better younger players like Luka Modric, Gareth Bale. I mean, some of the players that played for you in that era are known as world-class stars now, right? Yeah. So when you put that together with the fact that Arsenal was starting to get worse players too, of course, you were going to start to see success against us.
I do feel that was the turning point. That was the Danny Rose night was the turning point a bit in the rivalry. But yeah, but that was obviously at home. When we played a lot away, our records were really bad. So, for example, before I go into like another topic, with you not playing the Emirates, overall, do you guys feel more confident going into this game compared to when you played us earlier in the season?
When we were really poor and Harry Kane was knocking goals past us for fun. I mean, he's the top scorer in North London derbies, isn't he? So about 14 goals he scored.
Yeah. More than Adebayor. Adebayor had that record, I remember.
Adebayor is on 8, I think. But Harry Kane's 14, and he's the record goal scorer. When we were at our worst, you were at your best. We were frightened of playing you. And I'm not ashamed to admit that we were frightened. We were going into those games thinking, we're going to get a C2 here because we can't defend for love nor money, and apparently we can't score for love nor money. Yeah. These days it's very different. And home games in general, I think since 2021 we've played 8 home games against you. So there've been 8 North London derbies at the Emirates. Right. Yeah. God, I hate saying that, the Emirates, honestly. But and the record there is we've won 6 of them, we've drawn 1, and you've nicked 3 points on one of the occasions as well. So just the statistics alone, like we feel really confident at home. And it's weird because if you ask me if I want to play an away game or a home game this season, I would rather play an away game because for some reason I don't think we play that well at home. But if it's against Tottenham, but if it's against Tottenham, I want to play you at our place.
Okay.
The fans are a big difference. Arsenal fans, I think, and this not a lot of people will probably agree with me, but I think current Arsenal fans away from home are really good. They're getting better at home as well. It's a much younger crowd. A lot of the old boys are gone. The ones who used to just sit down with lots of money in their pocket, and I'd be singing on my own in the stands like a lunatic. No one would join in. That's changed. It's louder there now, and there's a lot more pride in the team. But
because obviously the Emirates was known to be kind of like, and we used to joke it was a library, basically.
Yeah. It was. I was there during those times, and I'd be singing on my own for the entire game. It was really horrible, and then we'd lose, and but at your stadium, like your fans are like a 13th player. I mean, you make a noise and you make such a partisan atmosphere. It's intimidating. So we know that, and I'm sure all Premier League teams know, if they're going to go and play in Tottenham in their yard, that they're going to get a hostile reception, and Tottenham fans will, for the majority of the game, still be supporting and singing for their team. Like I can hear it on the TV and all of that.
Even when we're losing 5-1, they're still.
Even when you're losing 5-1. I mean, once it gets, these days, if you're that far down, by the 80th minute, you're all gone. But that's normal.
Yeah.
But you do create an atmosphere, and I think it counts a lot because we can never get the same kind of fluency at your stadium as we do at ours. Even in the days when we were beating you regularly, it wasn't the same, right? We'd smash you at Highbury, and then we'd go to yours at White Hart Lane, and then even with the same players who smashed you and were smashing other teams on the regular, we'd be sneaking wins or only winning by a couple of goals.
A narrow margin.
Yeah.
That makes sense. So obviously, there's injuries and suspensions going into this game. I don't know about Arsenal's injury list. I'm going to ask you. I only know about Saka, and I know Havertz played the other day. But is there anyone else missing that's significant, or is anyone coming back by that point? Like, I don't know Arsenal's injury news at all. So,
okay, it's a really weird kind of time for Arsenal at the moment. Look, 2 seasons ago, that season where we rushed into the lead, and then eventually City pegged us back, and we had a bit of an implosion when Saliba went out injured. We didn't have a single injury all year until Saliba, right? And then last season, we were quite injury light again, just a couple of players. This season, we have been dealing with a lot. And I know we're not the only team. Like, all teams deal with a lot of injuries, but we've been dealing with a lot. We've lost Bukayo Saka, and so we can't seem to find the back of the net now.
Nwaneri is injured now as well.
Yeah, Nwaneri is not going to be there for this game either, so his replacement isn't there. But there are concerns over Martin Odegaard. He did play against Newcastle, but he and Kai Havertz have been ill, and they missed the previous game. And then they played this one, and they were very far off the pace. So both Kai Havertz and Martin Odegaard, we're worried about.
I didn't know Odegaard was ill.
He was ill. He came on as a substitute 2 games ago, and he looked like he should have just been at home in bed. To be perfectly honest, he was dying. I could tell he was out on his feet. So we've had illness in the camp as well. So when you're captain, and when you're best player, and when you're only goal scorer up front, only half decent striker, are out with illness or injury, you're going to struggle to find the back of the net. Put that together with Gabriel Martinelli and Leo Trossard, who 1 week will give you a 10 out of 10, and the next 2 weeks will give you a 1 out of 10. It's quite, you just don't know what you're going to get from us. We've got defensive injury problems, like Calafiori and Timber have just come back from long injury layoffs themselves. They've only had 1 game each, a couple of games each since they've been back. So Thomas Partey has probably been overworked, and we know his injury problems. Gabriel Jesus, there was a Christmas miracle for Gabriel Jesus. He scored a goal, but I think he did it just so that we could make Christmas-based puns, to be perfectly honest, because he's back to doing nothing again. So if you're asking me about injuries and suspensions, lots of injuries, lots of illness. I don't think we've got any suspensions, but it's form and fitness. I just don't know what we're going to get from Arsenal.
I'm surprised because, I mean, on the Tottenham end, right, we're missing like a lot of players. You must have heard. Yeah. So obviously, Forster's ill. Vicario is out for 3 months. So obviously, this Kinski's come in, and to be fair to him, as of this recording, I don't know if he's going to play against Tamworth, but was really good in his first game against Liverpool. He was probably one of our better players. Obviously, Van de Ven and Romero are out so far, but Van de Ven is on his way back, so I don't know if he'll be available for the derby or not. I don't know if he'll risk him, because he has done that before against Chelsea, and then he just pulled up and was injured for 2 weeks again. And there's been no real talk of Romero coming back, even though, like I said, that game when we played him against Chelsea was a very big surprise. He just dropped them straight back in, and we didn't see it coming. Obviously, Bentancur had concussion. I don't know what his situation is, because the club haven't really given us any sort of further whether he's going to be back, whether he's going to get time off, because he was completely knocked out. It was kind of like the Mwamba situation a few years ago. It was almost like that, and they ran a lot of tests on him. But as of now, I can't speak and say this is the issue, because they haven't told us anything really. Obviously, we're missing a lot of players. I mean, I'm losing count really.
So you've had a lot of defensive injuries, right? So
yeah, the whole defense.
Playing skeleton defense.
Dougie's out for 3 months.
Yeah,
I mean, because I've lost count with so many injured players. It's just like Mikey.
So essentially, So what you're saying, Harry, is that you and I can actually maybe get in the first 11 for our teams in the North London derby.
Probably.
Us and the tea lady. Yeah, let's get on it. Let's do it. I'm sending my CV in right now.
But the issue with Tottenham, I mean, this is not exactly about injuries and suspensions, but basically because we've had so many injuries in the back line, for example, and even up front, the lack of options, because suspensions here and there, like Maddison and Sassar were missing against Liverpool, and then Bentancur was missing because he had that ban. Then he came back, then he's got injured again. We've not had much continuity really. It's not been stable in that respect. But also, it's hard, I think, to kind of pinpoint our best team because we just have so many injuries. But also, because of we'll talk about tactics in a minute, but the way we play is so taxing on the players. They literally run the most in Europe. If you take the statistics, Spurs actually run the most in Europe. It's kind of mad. So I think that's partly the reason why we've had loads of injuries, because they're just running so much. Especially like Porro, who was out for a bit, came back. Obviously, Dougie's got this long-term injury again. But it's because they just they'll come back from an injury, maybe some get rushed back and then they get knocked again, and then because they're just running so much. Like, honestly, Kulusevski looks like he's on his last legs. If he plays against Tamworth, the guy and Solanke's the same. They chew on so much. It's just like, if they get injured, Richarlison's still injured. He won't be back for the derby. He's another one that's missing. Not that he may make that much of a difference, I don't think. But
do you think your players are injury prone, or do you think that it's rushing them back and overusing them?
I think some of them must be injury prone because Bentancur had that ACL, and I think it has affected him because last season he came back and then he got injured again. Like, it's happened a few times. And I do think it puts more strain on the rest of his muscles. Like, I do think that's not completely down to the way we play. But when you look at Van de Ven and Romero, Ange rushed them back for Chelsea, and I knew because at the game I was like, this is a really bad idea. Within what was it, 45 minutes to an hour, they were both off the pitch. And I'm just like, what? And now we have Gray and Dragusin playing at centre back. So, yeah. And Davies is injured. Before I forget, Davies is injured, so he won't be playing the derby.
If you were Ange, though, if you were Ange Postecoglou, and would you trust the players you have behind people like Romero and Van de Ven? Would you end up thinking maybe I do need to rush them back in the big games?
Well, obviously, we'll talk about this in a minute about the actual game itself in terms of what it means. But because Spurs have won one game out of the last 10 probably in the Premier League, if I'm not wrong, something like that. So I think he feels like he's under pressure. And that's what I thought, at least in the Chelsea game. So he thought, I'll rush them back because I need a result. So we end up losing that game, obviously, 4-3. But rather than trusting, Archie Gray, who we signed for 40 million, Dragusin, who we signed for 30, and saying, look, let's drop the line a bit. Let's try and adapt to the players that I actually have rather than trying to force my tactics onto players who can't clearly play the system. As you can tell, I'm not an Ange fan, but I think you know that already. But what I'm saying, I don't think our tactics help the players in this respect. And also, I put the Van de Ven and Romero injuries on him because he shouldn't have rushed them back. I remember it was like the game, and some people vouched for me for this. And I said, this is a really bad idea. Like, they're going to get injured again. And within 45 minutes, they're both off the pitch. So, but also just the amount of running they do is just like the inverted fullbacks. I know you lot play something similar to that. Is very taxing on the players, the way we play it, because they play almost as number 10s. And the amount of running in those fullbacks still is insane. Like, if you were there and you see it, it's unbelievable. And I'm just like, I don't know how they managed to do it. But I think that I'm not saying he's responsible for all the injuries, but I think he's partly to blame for maybe half of them. And maybe if he adjusted the style a bit, it would have prevented some of them, or not rush back players and might have prevented some of them. So I don't put it all on him because it's really unfair.
Well, it doesn't help when you've got
players are going to get injured, right? So, but I do think some of them he's responsible for.
It doesn't help when you've got 50, 60 games a season, though. 3 games a week.
Extra 2 games in Europe now for everyone. It's just, I know.
No, it's a lot. It's too much. And I think the statistics have sort of proven that it's not necessarily more injuries than before, believe it or not, but it's sort of the severity of the injuries, how long the players are out for. And we're all seeing it, like Tottenham have got their crisis, but it seems like every time a player gets injured, they're out for longer and longer and longer, right? Like before, you get a 2-week injury, a couple of days here, a week there, a couple of weeks there. A 3-week injury was like, oh gosh, that's a big one. Now it's 2 months, 5 months, 3 months, how do these players I worry about when they're going to be old men? They're going to have to be carried around,
literally.
Literally carried around. They're just going to be their limbs are going to be decimated. But
I think it's because obviously they added 2 extra games in the Champions League and Europa League, and also we've got all these other competitions in England. We've got the extra cup, the Carabao Cup. Obviously, we're both in, plus the FA Cup, plus the European competition. And obviously these new systems with the amount the players run, I just think the quality of the football has been diluted, but there's more quantity of it. That's basically what it feels like to me. And I think that's affected the players. You can tell they can't play the same level as, say, if we had less games in Europe, for example, or less cup ties or something. I don't know. Like, I think it would.
There is no way. There is
Yeah.
no way players can sustain high levels when they're playing that often. Like, they're not machines. Imagine, like, you and I, like, especially me, I can't even manage like 10 minutes of running, and you're asking these guys to do like 90 minutes, like 3 times a week.
Yeah.
The thought of walking up the stairs gives me, like, you know.
But it's kind of like a symptom of football in general, like, because, so for example, all these teams are getting injuries, so then they have to use the less players. But then if the less players are playing so much, they're going to get injuries, and it's just a never-ending cycle, really. And then, like you said, teams might be forced to rush players back. It might be a good idea or a bad idea, and then they play and they get injured. It's a never-ending cycle. But do you think that's why a lot of players back in the day didn't get injured as much then, because they had less games? Do you think?
Well, yeah, I mean, certainly there was less stress on their bodies because there were slightly less games. I mean, for the majority of teams, far less games, because these European competitions had either less games or they didn't exist. Top teams still had a lot of games, right? If you were in Europe, FA Cup, League Cup, Premier League, you still had a lot of games. But there was less stress on their bodies. There was less games means you have slightly more recovery time.
Because don't you forget the old UEFA Cup was just, I think, 2-legged affairs, wasn't it? I think there wasn't even a group stage back in the day, and then now it's an even bigger group stage. Before that was a group stage, and it's just unnecessary.
Now they've added on another 2 group stage games, and then if you don't finish in the top whatever, then you've got another 2-legged playoff before the actual knockout rounds. Like, it's a load of nonsense, and it's corporate greed and
money
gone mad. I just wonder, when is the bubble going to burst? Like, when will this money bubble burst? Like, when will enough be enough? And when will we start voting as fans with our feet?
Not
just our feet, but also our subscription money, right? Like,
Sky.
Do you think, like, do you ever think, oh, more football? Is that
I do, because it's like, even like, you know, they want to do it with the World Cup. They did it, didn't they? Or they're going to do it with the World Cup.
Yeah, they're increasing that.
And I'm like, I'd rather see less games with more quality, personally, than more games with lesser quality teams. That's just my opinion, anyway.
Like, all respect to the weaker nations in the world, but I don't really want to watch Tahiti versus Azerbaijan. All right, that's not for me.
I don't think they watch this podcast. I think. Anyways, let's talk a bit about your tactics. So I've watched a bit of Arsenal this season. I mean, as you know, because we have the same friends-ish. A lot of my friends support Arsenal, so on the weekends I do actually end up watching a bit of Arsenal. Arteta's kind of done a bit of Moyes, a bit of a Pep sort of thing. What do you expect? Obviously, in the away game, you've got just played low block pretty much. What do you guys expect to happen next Wednesday with the home game? Do you think you guys will do high, low? What do you think he's going to do?
Well, this is Mikel Arteta we're talking about, right? I mean, at this point, he's like the complete opposite of Arsene Wenger. I think he's gone complete 180, hasn't he? I mean, I find it really onerous watching Arsenal this season. They are a difficult watch. And I think there are a lot of people that are like, oh, Arsenal play really good football. I think that's like a hangover still from the Wenger days. Like, I don't think we play particularly good football consistently enough for people to say that. I think Arteta, like, people forget that Arteta has been there since the COVID years. He's been there for how many seasons have we had now? At least 5 seasons of Arteta, at least now. And yeah, we won the FA Cup when no one was watching, but like, the football was really poor for a couple of years, but understandable because he came in, horrible situation, horrible ownership model, horrible playing staff, horrible backroom staff. Like, everything was just broken, right? And the biggest thing that was broken was the mentality of the club. So he came in and he understood what it was to be a winner, and he brought in more of a winner's mentality, and sort of he understood, like, I'm not his biggest fan, but he has done plenty of good things, and he understood what it takes to win. He understood what it takes for a club to be a top club. And he understood Arsenal. I mean, he played for us, not for very long, but he played for us, and he understood what it means to be Arsenal, right? And he's restored a lot of pride. He's restored a lot of the mentality that is needed to go on and win things. And he got rid of a lot of difficult people inside the club, inside the playing squad. He got rid of a lot of people. And we are now talking about Arsenal in title races and things like that, right? And so that's a big change. After the teething years when he had to get rid of all those people, that season where we almost took it off City, and then the season after where we almost did it again, always the bridesmaid, never the bride. But the football we were playing was actually enjoyable. Like, I started to enjoy watching Arsenal, but it was like high octane, high emotional stuff, right? And every win was like this, right? I don't know how to say it. And it takes so much out of you, and it was taking a lot out of the players, and waiting on 97th minute winners, or winning 4-3 or 3-2, or, you know, these big sort of mentally exhausting games. As fun as it was to watch, I think for the coaching staff, who see things in a different way to us as fans, said, well, we can't maintain a successful team playing this way. Like, you're going to burn out the players, and it's just too dangerous. Like, you're on a knife edge all the time, right? And so I think Arteta, mainly because he's inexperienced, there's still a lot of inexperience about him as a coach. He's not been a coach long. Maybe because of that, he sort of went quite far the other way, and it was like, we have to eliminate the emotional side of the game, and we've got to have a solid base and foundation. Now, I love a solid base and foundation, right? Okay, I love watching a defender get in and make a beautiful, well-timed sliding tackle. I love seeing a good balanced approach to football. But the problem is that we went from being a huge attacking force, really fun to watch, to now being a huge defensive force, but at the expense of knowing what we're doing up the other end of the pitch. So if Bukayo Saka isn't playing and hasn't been hacked to death or marked by three of the largest men the other team could have possibly found in the British Isles, we don't know how to score. And you can't, like, people like Gabriel Jesus have been found out because he has a ceiling, and it's not quite, you know, it got us to a certain place, but he's not quite good enough now for what we want to do. Kai Havertz is a good player, but out and out striker is not him. I think he's better playing behind the striker and holding up play and bringing people in. He's great at that, work rate and all of that. To be honest, if I think of what we're going to do against you, how we're going to play, he's going to set up the same way he always does. He's going to rely on the defence. He's going to have his two holding tight midfielders alongside Martin Odegaard. Rice and ideally, he would play Rice and Partey. He loves Thomas Partey this year.
I noticed that.
It's either Rice and Partey, or it will be Rice and Merino, who are more holding. They don't give you that much going forward, like not a finishing touch. And then he'll have Odegaard alongside them, and then he will rely and hope to dear God that Martinelli or Trossard will be able to actually put in a decent performance and finish a chance off. You just never know with them. And up front, he'll have, if he's fit, he'll have Kai Havertz playing and hoping that he can. Well, we're going to put balls in the box. We're going to put balls in the box, and we're going to want him to get on the end of them, because that's what we do. We're not a counter-attacking team. I'm not sure we're even a traditional possession-based team either. It's more. We rely on very strict positioning and very strict movement, and it's being in that space at the right time, and then knocking balls in and using hard work and strength, right? It sometimes works, a lot of the times. I don't like watching it. I'm not a big fan of it. I think if you've got amazing attacking talent like Martinelli and Saka and Odegaard, and who I think are players that are capable of magic, and then you make them play in a really rigid system where they have to be in certain positions and they have to work really hard going back at the expense of some of that uniqueness and flair, you're going to get turgid games, right? Where you're sitting there going, I don't know where the next shot is coming from, let alone the next goal. It's like watching Everton, right? I'm watching Dominic.
He did play for Everton for a long time, didn't he?
Pardon?
He did play for Everton for a long time, didn't he?
He did, yeah. So he hasn't brought.
You know, he said because he said that he would admired Moyes a lot. So maybe he's kind of doing more Moyes this season than he is doing Pep, I guess, that he tried to do the past 2 seasons. I don't know.
Yeah, he's very big on. I think the biggest thing, I think one of the things that stands out most from Arteta's sort of tactics is that he relies, like Tottenham do to a certain extent, on the output and movement of the fullbacks, right? So it's all about, can that fullback provide another attacking outlet? Can they stretch the defenders? Can they come inside? They likes them cutting inside to create chaos.
Yeah.
And but the problem with Arsenal was that our fullbacks are massively injury prone. So he brought in Calafiori, who's capable of doing an excellent job, but he's injury prone. And Tomiyasu, who, in my opinion, is worthy of being in the world-class bracket if he's given time and stays fit. I think he's
interesting take. I've never heard anyone say that.
He's an unbelievable defender. Like at his best, he can't be beaten. He's so good going forward. But he's a traditional top class defender across the entire backline. You guys wanted him before we did.
I know. We went and got bloody Emerson instead. But anyway.
But the problem is he is made of glass. He is made of glass. I don't know if we'll ever see him again.
Okay, that's quite rude.
Honestly, I don't even know what injury he has. There've been so many. What part of his leg is currently banjaxed? I don't know, but it's part of his leg. If he's got any legs left, honestly, next time I see him, if he's walking on crutches and has had both legs lopped off, I wouldn't be surprised. But it's just, when you don't have the fullbacks and you don't have your best player, and your system relies on that, then you're going to see a diminished Arsenal. I think Tottenham can get at us because you can get at us out wide. Because if you stretch us out wide, Gabriel and Saliba will go over because they know where if we don't have our first choice fullbacks, they go over and cover. And we've seen in the last couple of games that they are pulled left and right and they split. And we had Newcastle do it to us. We've had a couple of teams do it to us where they've caught us out through the middle. I mean, Bournemouth, that's how Saliba got sent off. Like our centre-backs covering poor full-back play. And you guys are traditionally strong on the wing. If you pull our
maybe not this year. I mean, we've had Werner, Son, Johnson. These players are just they're not good wingers. Fit that way.
If you pull our fullbacks out and our fullbacks aren't having a good day, or Zinchenko is playing, for instance, then Gabriel and Saliba are going to have to cover for him, and that leaves spaces. And if Rice is not on song because he's been really off form this year, then there's no one to bridge the gap, and that's where you can get at us. And I think Arteta knows that, and I think he's going to play quite defensively, and he's going to rely on long balls, Martinelli's pace and things like that. Honestly, it's not very entertaining. I'd be surprised.
I was going to ask you this. I can't not ask you this, but obviously the media and obviously I've been talking about your set pieces and how Arsenal rely on the set pieces to score goals at the moment. You guys, I think, have got 10 to 12 set piece goals. I think I've read this season, something along that lines. Do you think there is an over reliance on the set pieces to get the winning goals at the moment, or is it just a media narrative or something that they're putting out?
Look, I don't think Arteta sets up the team to rely on scoring from set pieces. I don't think any top level coach does. I'm looking at you, Tony Pulis. All right.
Long throw.
They did mean it. But I don't think Arsenal go out to actually rely on it. But I think there is a very real understanding that you've got to eke out every single percentage point, and anywhere you can make gains will help.
Yeah.
I apologize. And
and on like Martinelli and Trossard, especially Martinelli this on, I was watching like a clip from, I can't remember what podcast it was, and like an Arsenal one, it came up on my feed or something, and he's talking about how he thinks Arteta, because you mentioned this kind of yourself, that's what I'll ask you, has kind of killed Martinelli, because as you mentioned, he's made him very positionalized, is that the right word? I don't know, very fixed in the system, rather than being like a let him play for fun, let's say, like give him freedom to express himself. Let's put it. Do you think that's happened this season, or do you think he's been coached out of it in that respect? Then I guess, if that makes sense. I don't know.
Yeah. It's yes, yes, I do think that. Look, this happens all the time in football, right? A manager comes in, he has a certain way of playing and certain ideas, and it suits players, and other players it doesn't suit at all. So one man's trash is another man's treasure, right? It's true. Yeah. So, like, look at Emil Heskey. Talk to Leicester fans and he was a hero. Talk to Liverpool fans and he was a bit of a joke, right? So players suit certain systems and personalities, and sometimes they don't. I just think with Martinelli, we've seen Martinelli at his free flow. It relies on pace, it relies on excitement, it relies on smashing that shot in, even when you're not expecting it. We bought him as a striker, and he was an excellent finisher.
I remember.
But now, he was scary. You're like, oh my God, he's through on goal, he's going to score. But now, Martinelli's through on goal, point blank with the keeper. I put my money on him missing, because the confidence isn't there. He's being coached every week in Arteta's system, and I just think it doesn't quite suit his strengths. And so, in that sense,
because I hate to say it this way, because I mean, this guy was probably my most hated Arsenal player, actually, but he reminded me a lot of Pires. And I was like thinking he's going to be like Robert Pires. And this season, I know, not as saying, but as in he reminded me a lot of his style and the way he plays, and there's quite a lot of similarities, I thought. But he's kind of like stagnated like massively this season and in the last season, and he was one of the Arsenal players I would have taken in a heartbeat. Spurs, to be honest with you, I thought he was probably the most dangerous player, I thought, at least in the past 2 years. But yeah,
we've been desperate to see him get back to his best. It's not happening. But we've got a couple of other players who seem to be doing well. I mean, Ethan Nwaneri showed that. I mean, if I had talent, I could only dream of having talent like that at 17. What I would do to swap places with him. And he showed that he can do it in any position across the pitch, in midfield and in the wing positions. He's gifted, and that we've got a young boy. I don't know if you've seen him play, Miles Lewis-Skelly.
Yeah, I saw him last week. Yeah.
By trade, he's a centre mid. That's where he played for our youth,
isn't he? I think.
Yeah. So he's by trade a centre mid. He was very successful in our youth teams, and the coaching staff have seen something in him that that Ainsley Maitland-Niles, actually exactly the same. Ainsley Maitland-Niles was a centre mid by trade. Actually, he was a winger by trade, and then they dragged him into centre mid, and then they thought, there's something about him that makes a good fullback, and he had a lot of potential as a fullback, and he took some really bad advice from people. He doesn't have good people around him, and look at him now. But Miles Lewis-Skelly is in a similar vein. He's a midfielder. He was an attacking kind of player, but he had the defensive side of the game too. And they thought he fits the fullback role. And he's come in and he's done even better than I thought he would. And I think that's the same for Arteta. I don't think Arteta thought he'd be that accomplished versus seasoned pros. And we're lucky because we've had a left back problem for many seasons now. And he's come in and he's given us a bit of belief that if Tomiyasu is knackered, then and Urian Timber is knackered because he's made of glass as well, then at least Miles Lewis-Skelly is a good option. But I do feel that you can hurt us in the ways I've mentioned, but I always look at Kulusevski for you. I know he doesn't have pace, but having watched him play,
Oh yeah,
uh, he's got intelligence, right? He's an intelligent player, and against us, the last couple times he's played against us, he's eventually faded out of the game. But in the first half of the games he's played against us, he's pulled our fullbacks left and right, and he's caused quite a lot of problems with his movement. And I am most scared of him. I'm not scared of Son, even though I should be.
Right, he's done now, pretty much. Son. I mean,
I know he loves the goal against us. He scored 8 against us, but
this season, I think it's the season where a lot of Spurs fans are kind of realizing. I mean, I said 2 years ago, but I was probably in a minority back then. But now they're saying, he's finished, but we gave him a year extension because obviously it's a PR move. Because as I know you've not been to Tottenham Stadium, but as you know, it's full of Koreans. So we've got to make that money. So that's another reason why he's given a year extension. And obviously, I mentioned Werner earlier. He kind of has the pace to do something, and he gets to the production part and just fails. Johnson has the production, but doesn't have anything else. Like, he can't take on a man, but he will score a tackle. Yeah. And I don't think we'll have Colomwani or anyone like that by the derby on Wednesday. I mean,
do you want him though?
I don't want him. I'm saying the club want him. I mean, yeah, he's all right. I mean, I don't think he's.
There's a reason that he's been offered to every other club going. Honestly, I think overrated.
Yeah. Overrated. He's one of those players where he could be good, but I don't know. It's like Rashford's another name being bandied about to loads of clubs, and as your reaction says it already, because he's been linked to Arsenal as well.
I would love to see you guys sign Marcus Rashford.
You know what? It'll be very Spurs signing. I'm not going to lie. It will be so Tottenham. But
just sign the next available English player.
I mean, I kind of expect him to play Van de Ven because there's been a lot of talk about him being back for it. And someone told me that Romero might even make an appearance. I mean, he might rush them back again, play him against Arsenal. We play the high line again. This is the issue. Like, if you guys are going to play so defensive, we've had issues with low blocks all season. We just can't break them down. Despite obviously Kulusevski's been our best player.
Same here. Can't do low blocks.
But I just don't think the thing I'm worried about is if you guys play defensive, I just don't know where we'll be able to break you down because you just Rice, Partey, Saliba, Gabriel, and whoever fullbacks play is just very solid. And we had that issue in the home game, and then you guys scored off a set piece, and the game was basically done after that. So there's that worry for me, especially because, like I said, if he brings all these players back in, I imagine Andrew will probably go back to his normal high line inverted. I mean, he's inverted fullbacks anyway, but high line again, not dropping them because the players are dropping. Maybe he'll go back to insisting they play short passes instead of these long balls we've seen in the past 2 games, where because the players are knackered, they're just thinking just play long ball because I can't be asked to run. They're just so tired, man. It's just, but and we actually benefited more from that, actually, ironically. Like playing longer balls, who scored the goal the other day against Liverpool. So, and I mean, Bergval's kind of come into form. Gray's been our centre back.
What do you think of Bergval? What is the opinion of Tottenham fans on him?
Well, you speak to someone like me, I'm like, let's see how it goes. He had a good game against Liverpool, and it's partly because he was playing as a number 10 where he should have been playing for the past 2-3 months. Because he played as a number 6 against Newcastle, actually. It was a bit weird. I was like, what? It's a bit strange playing Bergval as a number 6. Yeah. But a lot of Spurs fans are quite hopeful for him, especially because in pre-season, he was probably our best player. At least in the youngsters wise. I don't know about, the first teamers, because I didn't actually watch any pre-season games. And for Gray, a lot of our fans say he's generational. I know, I'm not joking.
Look, as a football manager player, he's always been highly rated, but he did come with a highly rated sort of like youngster.
Because his family is all footballers, basically. So yeah.
I mean,
we'll
at the end of the day,
he's done well recently. Yeah, he's done. To be fair to him, though, and this is why I'll give him massive credit. He's probably been one of our best centre halves this season. He's not even a centre half. So
you have to give him a break. At the end of the day, he's come to the top league for the first time, and he's been asked to play in a position he doesn't play in
left back, right back, centre back.
In a shaky defence,
very shaky defence,
with very little protection from its midfield. So
nothing, no protection from his midfield, pretty much.
So
But yeah,
you have to. I mean, you can't. This is how we ruin young players and wreck their self-esteem, right? Like Arsenal used to do it to defenders as well in the Arsene Wenger days when we started getting worse. We weren't protecting our defence, and then centre backs would join us. All these. I mean, remember Philippe Senderos and Johan Juru? Remember them?
Yeah.
I mean, what a joke. When you think of them, you laugh your head off, right? But they came to us as some of the most highly rated centre-backs in the whole world. If it was Europe, so therefore most of the world, right? And they had all the skills and talent needed to succeed. And they weren't terrible players. But in the system we played in, which was very similar to the very gung-ho approach that Ange has for you guys, there's there's nowhere to hide for a centre-back. There isn't a really tough defensive mid that just sits Makalele style and just screams.
You don't have that.
Right? You don't. If you're not gonna, if your wingers aren't gonna come back that often, then your centre backs are exposed all the time. And if they're not somehow incredibly top level, world class, never been better, they're going to look terrible. And we did that for years to players. Like people like Sebastian Scalacci was joke figure in England when he played for us. Complete joke because he was always so terrible. He had a stellar international career and he was a top level centre back.
Mustafi was another one, wasn't he? Mustafi.
Yeah, but he was already a bit of a joke. But you know, no one says do not don't mention the name Mustafi here.
But I agree with you because in the system that Ange plays, there's so much workload on the two defenders. I say because of fullback space, not even defenders, to do all the covering, and then you've got the midfielders running around putting out fires at the same time, and they're not even number sixes anyway, and it's just a mess. So in that respect, I do always feel sorry for whoever's playing centre back for Tottenham. I always feel sorry for them. I'm like, good luck, mate. You're gonna have to run down like a maniac for the next time.
It's amazing. It's really funny hearing you speak, and because it's just like hearing Arsenal fans during that time. It's like the same tactical kind of problems and issues. Like I think that brings us very nicely onto Mr. Postecoglou.
Yeah.
The Greek who isn't Greek.
We're the real Greeks.
Yeah, you better recognise.
Yeah. So I thought before I ask you, like Sofyan Arteta, I'm going to ask you. Obviously, a lot of Spurs fans are saying give Ange time because of Arteta, right? Mm. For number one, I want to know if you think Arteta be an success at Arsenal. Number two, do you think he should stay at Arsenal? Number three, is a comparison like valid in your eyes between Arteta and Ange based on obviously the time or whatever? So yeah. So first, do you think he's been a success at Arsenal, Arteta?
Yes. I do think he's been a success. I think it'll be incredibly unfair and short-sighted of an Arsenal fan to say Arteta has not been a success. I'm not his biggest fan, okay? So I'm still saying he is a success. There is no way, there are not many people on the planet who could have come in to the state that our club was. I mean, look at Unai Emery now at Villa and look at what he was like at Arsenal. I mean, there are not many men in the job that could have done what he did. He turned the whole club around. Yes, he was given the money to do it, but he turned much more than just a squad around. It's a mentality thing, and it's working with personalities and slowly getting them out, right? And
Aubameyang comes to mind.
Yeah, Mesut Ozil and Sead Kolasinac, these kinds of personalities that just needed to be hooked. You know, they needed to sling their hook. It's a hard thing to do. So in that sense, to make Arsenal contenders again, people talk about us in like glowing defensive terms. They talk about us in the title race. Well, we had a good 7-8 years where we weren't in that conversation. And Arsenal fans have to remember, we have to remember that. You have to remember when you're at your worst so you can appreciate when you're at your best, right? And I'm not saying we're at our best now. We're nowhere near. But compared to where we were, you have to say Arteta has been a success. But your second question was?
Yeah, do you see him still being at Arsenal? Like, do you think...
Success, he's been successful up to now. But when you raise the expectations and you spend the kind of money that Arsenal spent, because we're not the poor little choir boys. We're not the plucky outsiders.
Oliver Twist.
Right?
Yeah.
We've spent a lot of money. We've spent a lot of money assembling these players in this squad, and it's still not finished. This squad building, it's not balanced at all. But it's come to the point now where he's been at the club long enough, and he's raised the expectations enough, where actually the conversation is being had by Arsenal fans. It's being had by people like me at work. Plenty of Arsenal fans aware. It's all Arsenal and Tottenham fans at my place of work, and we have the conversations. And it's not conversations that are centered around "we hate Arteta." It's nothing like that. We respect him. I may not agree with his style of play and his tactics, but you have to respect him for what he's done for the club, and he does bleed Arsenal. All right, he's not a jobber, put it that way. All right, but we still have to have these legitimate conversations. We've got to a certain point now. We've spent a certain amount of money. We are expected to be able to do certain things. We've come close 2 seasons in a row. At what point do you have to turn around and say, look, is the team getting better? Is it being consistently good? Or is it always second place? Is it always falling short? Is it always we're not quite the finished product? And at the moment, this season, we've seen a worse style of play, arguably. We've seen a drop in most of our statistics, such as goal scoring and all of that. We're not far away from our points totals at relative points in previous seasons. So the statistics aren't that bad, but it feels like things aren't as good. And it feels that teams have worked us out more. And it feels like there are severe squad balance issues. And I said at the start of the season that I didn't think we were going to finish above third because I think we had a terrible transfer market. We didn't bring in the players we should have brought in attacking wise. We have no cover for Saka. We have no consistent striker. That's a problem in many clubs in the world. And we don't have cover for Martin Odegaard. So if your playmaker, your best player are out on the wing and your striker aren't there, you're going to struggle on the attacking end. And there's only so much a good defense can do. Eventually, you're going to start leaking goals, even with Gabriel and Saliba at the back. And we're seeing that we're leaking goals now, but we're not scoring any. So if we finish this season without silverware, there's a real conversation between Arsenal fans of, is that acceptable? Can you give him more time?
And more money
than he's
already
had?
as well. Yeah.
And there are some Arsenal fans who say he shouldn't be allowed to continue if he doesn't get silverware this season. Most Arsenal fans are happy to be patient for at least another year on top of that. I'm in the camp of, if he wins nothing this year, I'll be severely annoyed, but I may give him one more season. But past that, if you're not winning anything, you've taken the club as far as you can take it for now, and maybe someone else needs to take it further.
Because your Arteta's time at Arsenal, not in exactly the same respect, but reminds a lot about Pochettino at Tottenham, because he came in, we were a bit of a mess. In a year, he got us into the top 4 again. We were third, then we were second. We never really made it. And eventually got to the Champions League final by chance. And so then obviously at the end, people got fed up in those 4 years, or 5 years he was at the club, and said, we need a change. We need a new manager. Most people actually Poch out by that point, because we hadn't won a away game or something in 12 months or something by the time he left. I know it's crazy, isn't it? And the season before he left, we scraped 4th by 1 point above you lot, I remember. So things were starting to decline. Obviously, the Poch argument's different because he didn't sign a player for 18 months. There's other factors as well, but on the whole, it's quite similar situations, I think, a bit. Except I think Arsenal have been more consistent in terms of title races compared to Pochettino, I'd argue. Because you guys have been up there 2-3 years now in a row. And this year, I expect you guys to at least finish third, like you said. I think third is almost guaranteed, I think, for Arsenal. But my last question was, do you think the comparisons between Arteta and just not as the managers and tactics, but is it a fair comparison about time? And do you think it's a fair comparison? Or because a lot of Spurs will say, well, Arteta, it's been 5 years he's taken them to the title races, for example.
Look, the difference here, And I'm going to say something that all Tottenham fans have been screaming about for for every season, it feels like.
Yeah.
What Arteta had was that he eventually got the backing of the board financially. So we were able to pay the money to get players like Declan Rice in, for instance, right? So if you've got the playing squad, then you can start to, I mean, it's a results business. So you've got to have a playing squad good enough to get you the results, which in turn gets you the time you need to keep coaching and get your ideas across. If it's more than fair to say, if Postecoglou deserves more time, right? It's more than fair to say that for any manager. He deserves more time because you're working with human beings and you're trying to mesh together ideas and personalities. It's a really hard job, right? Like as a teacher, you're working with personalities, and I know just how hard it can be. Not all your methods work for every person in that room, and they don't all learn it the same way. So why would it be any different in a sports team? So it can take time for you to get the right personalities, tweak your techniques and your ideas. And that does need time. And managers really are hard done by. It's a hard job. They don't get given enough time. So in that sense, Ange should be given more time. But he should only be given more time if your board is willing to back him, give him the money to bring in the kinds of players he wants and needs that fit his system, right? Otherwise, there's no point giving him more time. If your board doesn't want to do it, get rid of him now. End of story.
But you don't know this, but you know Ange has spent 350 million already.
Over how long?
Since he's been here. So we saw him.
Really? And how much of that have you got back?
I think it's like, I'm not too sure about the net spend, but he spent 350 million. Of course, we saw the Harry Kane money in that, so that takes off 100. Yeah, he basically covered Brennan Johnson and a few other players. Harry Kane. Obviously, last time he dropped 40 million on Gray, 65 on Solanke. Like we have made big purchases, actually, surprisingly. But do you think, like, because I'm of the opinion, as you know, I'm Ange out, but I think the problem with my comparisons between Arteta and Ange is Arteta's in his first, like you said, the experience in his first job as a manager, like ever. Ange has been in management for 20 years.
Yeah.
And another thing I noticed personally is that Arteta came into Arsenal and, for example, started with a back five because of the players he had, and then later down the line, he changed into a back four.
Yeah.
Etc.
Okay, so
that's how I see
you and I
will
agree.
Sorry.
You and I will agree with what I'm about to say, because
okay.
I know what you're getting at, and I agree with it because what you're saying is Arteta has shown a certain level of flexibility since the beginning of his time to now. Not as much as people think, but he has. All right. Whereas Ange Postecoglou comes across as a stubborn child.
and it's ironic because he's the older one as well.
Yeah. I think you're right in terms of if he doesn't change his ideas and values and tactics, and he doesn't tweak, at least on the surface of what we've seen from what he says, but also you see your team play more than I do. It seems like Tottenham fans don't really see much different happening every single week. And that to me is a cardinal sin in the modern game. Arsene Wenger's career petered out because he stuck to his beliefs, but you have to evolve with the times. Football changes, the tactics, the pace, the format, everything changes. Sir Alex Ferguson, who I detest, who I absolutely detest, but completely and utterly admire, was the best because he kept reinventing with the times. He changed his tactics. He brought people into his club that could deliver the new message and the new way of playing. He changed the way he dealt with players, the way he spoke to people, the way they played on the pitch. He had some terrible Man United teams towards the end, and he still won things with them. That tells
Anderson, Fletcher. I mean, I could read off a few names.
Yeah. I mean, we got hammered 8-2 and all sorts by some of the worst United teams ever. And you look at it today, and I still cry about it. I'm just like, how did that team?
Ashley
Wes
Young,
Brown
didn't he score that
playing a
game? I
team
think
that beat us
Ashley Young.
8-2.
Yeah, it's just.
Yeah.
Ferguson adapted with the times constantly, really, because obviously Jose came in, Chelsea did what they did. He had to go and beat them, basically. City came in, he had to go and beat them.
Yeah.
Before that, it was the Wenger years.
Yeah.
I think Wenger's downfall actually was kind of the fact that because you guys had Fabregas, this is just my opinion, by the way. I think he kind of tried to copy Barcelona in that respect, and he lost the whole idea of having, say, like a Vieira in the midfield or a Gilberto, if that makes sense. He kind of lost, if that makes sense.
I know the outside view is like that. But what contributed to that more was the sort of the idea behind the squad building. So Wenger was notoriously and famously in charge of all the transfers and who came in, who came out, and there wasn't anyone who ever sort of sat him down and said, challenged him, which is what people need. He was so all powerful at the time that, he was the first word and the last word. And so he didn't want to spend a lot of money. He had that economics background. Sorry, I couldn't say the word. He had that economics background, and he was very big on the financials, and he didn't want to spend the money on the kinds of players we needed. So he would buy cut price options and try the youth players and give and trust. And still play his same tactics. It just didn't work.
That told me that the bank or someone that wouldn't give the loan or something if Wenger wasn't in charge or something like that. Was it you, Tom?
No, it wasn't me.
Someone told me that Arsenal had to keep Wenger because if they didn't keep him for a certain amount of time, that the banks wouldn't loan money to them or something, because he said he would say get you Champions League on a budget to pay off the stadium partly. Or something like that.
I don't know the veracity of
I don't know exactly. I'm not an Arsenal fan. Someone told me this once, and it stuck to me. I can't. I think Wenger kind of. I remember someone made a comparison to Brian Clough, as in he was the first 10 years, he was an incredible manager, and he didn't get with the times later down the line. And that's when
he still managed to win a few FA Cups, which
he still won more trophies than we did in that timeline.
So. Your words, not mine. Your words. But look, back to Ange and how that all links together. We're not just talking about Arsenal after all. That what Ange is doing is that he comes out in public and on TV interviews, and he's so he comes across. He may not be arrogant in real life. We know people are different behind the camera when it's football games and after a game of football, right? But he comes out and he seems so arrogant, like, well, I've won trophies everywhere I went. And in my first season, I win trophies, and and he's calling Spurs fans anti-Spurs fans comments and all of that, and having a go at the fact. I mean, as soon as you come out and seem like you're being really, really arrogant, and then dissing your own team's fans, you need to back up your words, and you need to do a seriously good managerial job. And every week, if you're not tweaking your formations, that's a footballing sin. You can't go and play the same way against Man City as you do against Man United, as you do against Aston Villa. You've got to think about what the other team has and what their strengths are and how you can counter that. That doesn't mean every week you're going to have different tactics necessarily, but you need to have plan A, B, C, and you need to know which players work in which situations, right? And he clearly shows that he doesn't really think
want to do it. He doesn't want to do it either.
And then he's surprised when Tottenham go and lose, and then they win the next week, and then they lose 3 weeks in a row, and then they win. So, well, that's what happens. If you play the same way every week, some teams you'll beat, but many teams you're going to lose against because they know what you're about. And a manager who doesn't tweak and change and adapt is a manager who's going to sink and who's eventually going to lose his job. And to be honest, that's where Ange is going. I don't personally think he's going to win you anything at all. You're close in the League Cup, but
I don't think we're going to win the Carabao Cup. I might leave that topic out, but just because I'll ask you a quick question, because you guys are in it too. So you don't think we're going to win it? I
don't think either of us are going to win it.
Neither of us are going to win it. Okay, I thought we'll keep it short. So because the last segment is going to be about the title race, because I might as well bring it up.
I don't think either of us are going to win it.
Yeah. But yeah, so for me, the whole tweaking thing, and so some fans who will watch this. I mean, most of my audience isn't actually Ange in, so I don't know how many of them will watch it, but we'll see it and think, this guy is just being, disingenuous, but for me, it should come differently because it's coming from someone who's like an Arsenal fan who sees them from an outside view. Like, I've always admired managers who, I'm not saying you don't have to, and this is where the problem lies in our fan base, Alexis. So because of Conte and Jose before, fans were clamoring for attacking football. I'm just labeled as attacking football for now, even though it's not been exactly that way. So when Postecoglou came in and played this whole high line, chucking everyone in the box, attacking everyone up the pitch, everyone's like, yeah, this is what we want, blah, blah. But then I've seen other attacking managers before him, Ange, come in, like Pochettino, Redknapp, Martin Jol to some extent, I'd argue as well, who did play an attacking style, but at the same time, they had a defensive shape, let's say. I don't know. But with Ange, a balance. Like, I just don't see this under Ange. And this is where, because what I'm saying, what people will say is, say, if you said this to a Tottenham fan, I mean, I don't know if they watch, like I said, who watched this video, if they're Ange in, they'll be like, you're being very like, you don't see what he's doing, blah, 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 blah. But then, surely if it's coming from someone else who doesn't support Spurs, like, and they can see it, like, how can you not? I think the problem is because he came after Conte. There's a kind of like a big narrative that we can't go back to uber defensive when that's not really what I'm trying to say. I'm just saying I just want to balance. I'm not saying he's completely stop attacking like you just spent 10 minutes of this podcast saying you want your team to be more attacking, but at the same time obviously not throwing away the whole defense. Right? Do you know what I'm trying to say, right? So there is like a middle ground to it, and that makes sense tactically. Like there isn't, I don't think that,
definitely. Of course there's a middle ground. Maybe it's hard to achieve that, but the way that Tottenham defend just can't be considered in anyone's book. Well, it can't be considered successful. It can't. It just can't. No football fan in the deep in their heart, forget the bluster, and football fans will shout and scream and get tribal and say a lot of stuff they don't really believe, right? Especially if they're being filmed, right? But deep down, there can't be any Tottenham fan that sits there and watches Tottenham games and thinks, this is how defending should be done. It's just not. You can't watch it and think that's a balanced team. I love attacking teams, right? I love attacking teams, but I don't want to watch an attacking team that then doesn't do any defending and then concedes 4 goals. So you need to score 5 goals to win a game.
I mean, the thing is, I'll give you an example, and this is only a few weeks ago. We lost 6-3 to Liverpool. A lot of our fans were saying we scored 3 against Liverpool. It's an achievement. But hold on a minute, we conceded 6 goals. Like, I don't understand how this is even any good. Like, if we drew 3-2 or we lost maybe 4-3 or something by the odd goal, and they scored 2 penalties, for example, or like 2 free kicks. Do you know what I'm trying to say? There's some situations where we're like, fair enough. But the fact we conceded 6 goals at home, which by the way was the 10th time we've conceded 3 goals in halves, by the way. So like 2 within that game. So 3 in one half, 3 in another, and that was the 10th time altogether. Just some statistics thrown in there because you don't know that till now. So like for me, I'm not saying Ange should completely throw away attacking. I'm just saying, for example, some games we play you lot, for example, at the Emirates, don't invert the fullbacks. Tell them to sit back a bit because you're going to have Martinelli and Trossard or whoever on the wings, especially Martinelli. I still think is a danger. He's going to come at you. So you don't want to leave that hole when Martinelli might get the freedom to score a goal or do danger. I'm not saying you should completely stop attacking. It's just you just want to see certain, like you said, tweaks, and and it's just I just don't see it. And some may argue, I'm going to play devil's advocate here, that because of obviously what happened with Klopp at Liverpool, where he played that system regardless. I mean, maybe it was a more balanced system. I wasn't watching Liverpool that much at that time, and with a few extra top players like Van Dijk and Alisson, he fixed it and he got over the line. And because he played that so much, the players eventually got used to playing it, and the injury stopped, and blah blah. Do you think there's a valid point in that respect? I'm just playing devil's advocate. Obviously, that's not my opinion, but anyway. Do you think there's a valid point in that respect, in the sense that players need to learn the system and blah blah?
Well, yeah, but he's been coached long enough for his players to have learned his system, especially because his system is the same every single week. Right? I mean, he doesn't change his system ever. So he doesn't. So if they haven't learned it by now, then maybe you need to sell him. right? Because
I know, yeah, some fans will say Levy hasn't backed him, and to some extent, I do agree with them because some of our signings have been a bit, meh.
but this is it. I'm
But at the
surprised.
same time, would you not argue that then, if that's the case, he should try and get the best out of what he's got at least? I don't know.
Well, look, as a manager, he's got no choice but to get the best out of what he's got. Like, you have to. But I'm surprised when you told me how much money he spent. But then again, I think that you've made quite a lot back.
We have made a lot back. I'm just saying. That's
so
just like,
it's not as big a spend as you think. But like at the same time, 65 mil on Solanke was that it's the smartness of the deals as well, right? So you ask for money to buy a player. And then you're like, I really want that player. There has to be someone good enough and smart enough with a football brain up top to say, I know you want Dominic Solanke, but I'm not going to give you £65 million to buy him because he's not a 65
That was
million
his player, though. That was his player. He came out and said, he was the one we identified or wanted.
And look, Dominic Solanke, like, had promise as a youngster, completely failed, went to Bournemouth, had one decent season, not even good, decent season in the Premier League, and suddenly he's a £65 million player. It's a symptom of modern football markets where one player just has to have one good season. Suddenly he's worth, 60, 70, 80 million, which is ridiculous. Okay. I would never have paid £65 million for Dominic Solanke. I know though that the going rate is like that for a striker now. So there is
not even like a top striker. I think 60 million gets like an average / good striker. I don't think it gets you a top striker anymore. Like the money that's for Gyökeres is like 80, 90 million, isn't it? I think.
Yeah, so that's the antithesis, the opposite.
Isak's like 100 million, I think they're talking, or maybe more than that.
Talking, and it's I don't know if he has a release clause in his contract that's lower though.
I don't think so. I don't know
if they wrote it out because he signed a new deal, but
I think you're right. I think that's what they did. Yeah.
It's hard because there aren't a lot of world class strikers. I think there's a general dearth of high level talent, right? And I think in football in general, we're seeing a lot less top quality players, and maybe it's because there's a generational shift happening. So soon, in like 5-6 years, there'll be lots of the young players who will be world class, but I'm not seeing the same levels of high quality strikers as they used to be. But 65 million pounds. But the thing is, what did Ange see in Dominic Solanke? It sounds like I'm picking on him, right?
That's what everyone tells me. It's the pressing because he presses like a madman, which is, to be fair, is true. But I don't think that. I think I don't know how to explain this, but like he suits the system in the respect of, like, say, off the ball, I guess. And that's the best way I think I can put it, because he's the best presser in the team by like a country mile, which makes it a real shame that the wingers alongside him, their pressing is like god awful, and they don't we don't press as a unit. You just see Solanke run like a madman for like 90 minutes.
Yeah, then it's pointless.
And he needs a rest this weekend. Like he has to have a rest, because the guy's going to die otherwise if he presses another game like that. But then at the same time, when we get the ball, apart from the other week when Porro put a cross in for him for a score with a header, because Solanke is a tall fella, right? You'd expect we'd put more crosses in or more balls across the box they can get onto. We don't really play like that. All our goals are quite similar. They play whip it across them. So it's without the ball, he's really good for us. Yeah. But with the ball, we don't really support him enough. Like we don't play to his strength. I'm not saying he's a top striker by any means. I'm just saying that it's kind of like, I don't know.
Well, it's like if Arsenal had Giroud up front and they constantly played it to feet, like
it's like, what's the point?
That's what's happening as well. And but I mean, it are the transfer deals you're making, the amounts you're paying, are they smart? Are they smart for the quality you're bringing in?
Yeah. What I would say about Solanke though, by the way, I see where you come from with the fee, but he was English. There's like English tax. He was Bournemouth's best player, arguably, and I'm not saying, by the way, I would have paid 65 million for Solanke. I'm just saying this is why I think it cost that much.
No, definitely. But
I think the worst one's Johnson for 50 million. That's just insane. Like that's insane. Yeah.
Well, why do you think? I mean, again, I'm going back to Wenger, but why do you think he just refused to sign English players? because when he
the tax,
approached,
the tax.
because he approached clubs, look, Wenger always
Yeah, I
said
think it
that
was
he
kind of
loved.
hurt from Francis Jeffers as well, though.
Yeah, but like Wenger always
Yeah.
said he loved English players,
Yeah.
and he did. He actually genuinely did. He wanted to have like lots more English players at Arsenal. But whenever he approached clubs for upcoming English talent, you can imagine the kind of fees they were asking. I mean, look at what.
Rooney, I guess Rooney was one of them, wasn't it? I think.
And he would just turn around and be like, "But I can go to Europe and I can buy someone of the same
Quality,
potential."
yeah.
Not even quality potential, for instance. I can go find a youngster in Europe for like £20 million less or £15 million less. Why would I pay? Like, it's just too much. And now those fees, if they offered you those fees now, you'd probably take it.
Yeah.
Right? Because now it's like three
That's
times
why
more.
Gray cost 40 million because he's English, really, if you think about it.
Yeah.
If he was some random guy from, I don't know, France or Belgium, or he probably would have cost half as much, I imagine, or maybe even less.
Yeah.
I mean, Bergwijn cost, I think, 12 million, 15 million, maybe, or something like that. And some may argue Bergwijn is a more exciting player, as in like he's got more talent. I don't know. You can say either way, but you make a very good point. Yeah. Before we got to like a score prediction, just one more topic. Obviously, we're not in the title race, so I'm not really going to answer that. But do you think Arsenal have any chance of winning the title this season? Bear in mind, City have had this on and off thing. Liverpool, I mean, maybe they're starting to tail off. I don't know. But do you think that Arsenal still win the race? Do you think Forest might even get in there in the end? I don't know. I mean, they go and win at Anfield. Sorry, they win at home the next week. Then they might be in the talking points because they'll be 3 points behind Liverpool. But do you think Arsenal's still in it? And do you expect you guys to take to the wire again?
Well, we're really inconsistent, and I don't think we're going to win the league. But if you look at the table, then we're still in it. It's as simple as that. We're still in it. Where are we? Second, third in the league. We keep bouncing between us and Forest, right? So the fact is, we're drawing, winning, losing, drawing, winning, losing. There's no consistency at all, and yet we're still bouncing between second and third in the league. And Liverpool, who knows if they're going to have to hit a rough patch at some point. They're not going to maintain this all the way to the end. Surely not. They might, but it's
bear in mind,
unlikely.
last season you guys had this sort of start. And was it after Christmas or was it January when you guys went on that crazy run of winning?
We had a good run towards the end, but then City outdid it. But yeah, I still there's always a chance. Mathematically, we're still in with a chance. Liverpool have got a comfortable lead, but we're not out of it yet. I just don't think we've got enough. Yeah, we're in the title race. I don't think personally we'll win it, but we will play every game and watch as fans, hoping that we can pip Liverpool to it.
Okay, all right, fair enough. I mean, I don't think Spurs are in it, so all right.
Just sorry, that's a
tiny,
needy cat.
So we're near the end. But firstly, just let me know what lineup you think Arsenal put out and the score prediction, and I'll do mine, and then I think we'll just close it off. Yeah.
Tough because of all the injuries and illness, but I think if Arteta
for example, do you think some play on the right because of Nwaneri and Saka's been injured? So.
Well, Arteta will play the strongest team that he has available. He's very much like that. So David Raya will be in goal. Gabriel.
You've got United before that. You got Man United in the FA Cup before that.
He will play strongest teams he can every single game in big games. Okay. That's what Arteta does.
Okay. All right. Okay. All right.
No, so he will play. He will play.
Raya, Gabriel, Saliba.
Raya, Gabriel, Saliba will play all of those games.
And then left back, right back would be Calafiori again.
He will play because we've got Man United. Calafiori will play one of the two games, I think, between Man United and Tottenham, and Yuri and Timber will play both because he had a suspension. He's suspended, isn't he? I think Timber suspended for a game, so he will play against Tottenham for sure. Declan Rice will play against Tottenham, no doubt. I think he'll go with Thomas Partey because of the experience against Tottenham. I'll be surprised if he plays Marino. He might, but I think he'll go with Partey. And then he'll have, if Odegaard is fit, he has to play.
Yeah.
Out wide, he doesn't have Saka or Waneri, so we don't have any choice. We only have 2 wingers left in the entire squad, and clearly Raheem Sterling is that's actually a hologram of Raheem Sterling on the bench. I'm convinced. He's not real. He's not real. There's no way. He's just there as bench filler. He must have the warmest bum in London, honestly.
Is he fit again, or I thought he was injured, wasn't he again?
He had a knee injury, but apparently he's come back earlier than thought, and he still sat on the bench against Newcastle when we needed a goal.
All right, okay, so maybe he won't play then. Yeah, maybe he won't play then. Yeah,
it's just Arteta doesn't seem to like him anymore. I don't know, but it shows you a lot about our transfer market, doesn't it? But yeah, I think it'll have to be Martinelli, Trossard out wide because there is no one else.
And Havertz, I guess.
And then it will be Havertz up front if he's fit. It will be Havertz. I don't think he'll trust Gabriel Jesus to play against Tottenham. And Gabriel Jesus has never really played well against Tottenham. So that's what I would do. And that's what I think he might do.
For Tottenham, it's pretty obvious what I think we're going to do. Obviously, Kinski will be in goal, the new keeper. And then he'll go with Porro on the right because Udogi's injured and Spence on the left, despite the fact it might be better to maybe put Regular on the left and Spence on the right to be more balanced. But anyway, Spence at left back, even though he's right-footed. And obviously, if Van de Ven and Romero get back, which I have a funny feeling at least one of them will be back for the derby, most likely Van de Ven, I think he'll put him in. With Van de Ven and Dragusin maybe, or Van de Ven and Romero. I think Van de Ven will probably be on the bench against Tamworth, or maybe he'll give him a few minutes at the end or something like that. Because there is a lot of rumours going around that he's going to be back for the derby. So whether he'll get any game time before that, I don't know. Get on the weekend. And then the midfield, I think he'll go Bissouma, Sarr, Kulusevski most likely, because he doesn't fancy Maddison. There's even rumours that they fell out. And then up front, Solanke obviously will take that spot. I think he'll go with Son on the left because, I mean, he always
his
does.
record against Arsenal, yeah.
Yeah, and then I think Johnson on the right, and that's kind of been his front three most of the season. There is obviously the odd chance that he might put Maddison in the 10 and Kulusevski on the right, but I don't know, he doesn't seem to fancy Maddison anymore, and even though he was our best player away to City, since then he's not got a look in, so that's why I think it's more of like a personal thing rather than a footballing thing. That's what it seems like to me at the moment. I mean, there's no confirmed reports, but you hear stuff from leaks and stuff, and
it feels that way.
Yeah. So my score prediction, I think, unfortunately, I think it'll probably be 2-1 to Arsenal because I think you guys will edge it in the end. But what do you think? Do you think it could be a bit draw, or do you think you guys are going to win?
I was going to say 2-1 to Arsenal as well, but there will be a penalty.
Oh, great!
There will be a penalty. All right, always. I mean, I looked this up. I did a little bit of research as well about penalties, and the North London Derby is the game with the highest number of awarded penalties in the history of the Premier League, with 26, and 24 of them have been scored, which is another record of the most penalties scored.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, we are because, well, you know why that is, because neither team can defend. We're awful at it. We're just like,
but it's weird. I think when we were growing up, though, like the games when we were like the really bad team and you were the really good team, I actually think the games were a lot more tighter. Like you'd win, apart from the games at Highbury, not all the games at Highbury, but apart from a lot of them, until Martin Yole came in, you'd obviously destroy us at Highbury, like 2-3-1, 3-1, 3-0, whatever. And then, but you come to ours and it'll be like maybe a goal, that's it. Or 1-1, or even when you guys had like the best team, it was still like 1-1, or maybe you guys win 1-0 or 2-0 or 1-0. Like it was always quite close. But I think as we got older, because partly we've become better and you've become a bit worse in that respect, the games have become a lot more open.
Yeah.
Because I think the level of the teams are not as far as they were, and maybe that's why. Because now it's like I look back and I think Martin Yole's first game, we lost 5-4, the one you mentioned earlier in the podcast, was like crazy game. We lost 5-4 at home. And then, we had the 4-4 under Harry. Like there's so many games you can point to where it's like 3-2, 5-2 when you beat, like so many goals because it's just teams can't defend.
Do you know what? Like, I think a North London derby is like a whole. It's like its own animal, right?
Yeah,
Where
yeah.
forget about form, forget about anything that you're expecting, right? Like
Everything else.
there's all kinds of stuff that goes on in a derby of any kind, and it just defies expectation sometimes, right? Like the players' minds think in a different way and all sorts. I just think that these two teams, especially let's say in the later years of our lives so far, I think the defenders we've had in general have been of a lower quality, both teams, Arsenal and Tottenham. And with that just comes generally worse tackling, but also a much faster paced game. Much stricter. I know this sounds crazy because refereeing is awful in this country at the moment, but stricter refereeing. Like, have you ever gone back and actually watched a full 90-minute game from like 1998 or 2000, 2001?
Oh, actually, it's funny you bring that up because I've been doing that quite a lot lately.
Yeah. Have you seen the tackles they used to get away with?
I'm just like,
I'm like, oh, I thought it was the legs are going to
get... If you go on YouTube, there's a channel, you probably might like it. It's called DM Arsenal Archives or something.
Yeah.
And I actually found the channel by accident because I was watching like old Liverpool games. For some reason, you know, the algorithm on YouTube gives you suggestions. I was watching an old Liverpool Tottenham game or something, and then it suggested me. So I looked for like West Ham Liverpool, the FA Cup final. I wanted to rewatch the old games because it's just so, you know, it's like some of those games are historic. Like West Ham Liverpool was probably the best FA Cup final ever, at least in my lifetime. And by chance, I discovered the Arsenal channel, and they had Arsenal Tottenham. So I thought, you know, I'm gonna go rewatch some old derbies. To be fair, like he put some of the derbies on that we were quite good at, like the 1-1 in 06, we were playing you a lot at home when King scored that header. Like I think that's the derby we should have probably won. But that game was very close because the teams were more defensive back then. I think like better defenders. You had obviously still had Campbell and Toure. King and Dawson, let's say. Like there were some periods where both teams had like high level defenders and the games were a lot closer. And obviously when we had Vertonghen and Alderweireld, your defense wasn't that great, so we used to steamroll you most of the time. But then there'll be times in the early years when I was growing up when you guys had like Toure, whatever, Keown, whatever, and we had like Tarico and Ben Thatcher, and you destroy us basically. So like there has been times when, you know, one team's had like a way better defense than the other, and it's kind of shown. But there's been a lot of times recently when we've kind of had the same sort of level, and it's created these open games, I think. But if you like old games, those are two channels I discovered by accident. But
I see the tackles flying in, man. I can't believe what players used to do to each other. And
they don't remember the derby. So there's a tackle in that game. Toure fouls Mido. You know what I'm talking about, don't you? And Mido's on the phone because he dived. And Toure goes up to him and starts screaming.
Just having that. I can't believe the stuff they used to get away with, honestly.
And it's like nowadays, I look at them, they're that shaking hands, like Kane's friends with Saka. I remember.
What are your feelings on that? What are your feelings on that, Harry? What are your feelings on that when you see players, you know, hugging the opposition team?
You know when Maddison did that early in the season to Arteta? Do you know what I'm talking about? You know when he hugged Arteta after, I was like, "What are you doing, mate?" Like seriously, like, I just don't get it.
Your face.
Like, what are you doing, mate?
I can't stand it. I can't stand it.
It's modern football. It's not the same.
Everyone's just so buddy. Like, look, you can be friends with whoever you like, but before, like after the game,
on the pitch,
like after the game's done, then whatever. But like, don't be standing there in a tunnel having a chat with like the opposing team's captains. Like, what is going on?
Like, nowadays, they're talking like, "Oh, after the game, mate, we'll go to the club, we'll go to hit a bar or something." Like that's probably what they're talking about.
Right.
Yeah. So I agree with you. Yeah. So I think that's the end. So anything else you want to say about the game before I just close it off?
Well, let's hope it's entertaining, and let's hope we give you a good old beating and bring back the old memories, eh?
I hope not. I hope we get something. I'll take a draw right now. I'll take a draw right now. All right, thanks. You're not on any social media or anything, so I'm going to shout out any of your like deets. So, guys,
I'm on natural
stream and come on, you.